The House passed a bill proposing the most sweeping tax overhaul in 3 decades on Thursday, in a 227 to 205 vote. "We've got a long road ahead of us," Speaker Paul Ryan said. CreditAl Drago for the New York Times. Good morning. Here's what you need to know. The Senate is to consider a tax overhaul bill when it returns from Thanksgiving, after the Finance Committee approved the measure late Thursday. An analysis by a nonpartisan congressional committee said the measure, if it passes, would effectively raise taxes for lower-income Americans by 2021. The House approved its own version of a tax bill on Thursday. Here's how every lawmaker voted. We explain who wins and who loses in the effort to enact $1.5 trillion in tax cuts for businesses and individuals. Al Franken, Democrat of Minnesota, could face an inquiry by a Senate ethics panel after a woman accused him of kissing and groping her in 2006, when he was a comedian. Mr. Franken issued an apology, but he faced criticism from fellow lawmakers, as well as from President Trump, who has himself been accused of harassment by several women. Our chief Washington correspondent says the days of shrugging off UAL misconduct at the Capitol may be over. Here's a list of the prominent men, in government and beyond, who have recently been accused. Separately, the Alabama Republican Party offered unqualified support to the Senate candidate Roy Moore. The U.S.-led battle against the Islamic State is the most precise air campaign in history. But many more Iraqi civilians are being killed than the official count suggests. Over 18 months, 2 reporters visited the sites of nearly 150 airstrikes across northern Iraq, interviewing hundreds of witnesses, survivors and family members. They also spoke to U.S. officials directing the campaign. The report, the focus of this week's Times Magazine, concludes that 1 in 5 strikes cause civilian deaths, a rate more than 31 times what the coalition acknowledged. Senator Robert Menendez of New Jersey can return to Washington after jurors in his federal corruption trial were unable to reach a verdict. To those who were digging my political grave so that they could jump into my seat, I know who you are and I won't forget you, he said on Thursday. The Democrat, who has been in the Senate for 12 years, is up for re-election next year. Emerson Mnangagwa once explained his nickname by saying, "It strikes at the appropriate time." The former vice president of Zimbabwe was fired last week, but he is expected to become the leader of the southern African nation after the military took President Robert Mugabe into custody. Officials and observers say Mr. Mnangagwa shares some of Mr. Mugabe's traits. He is power-hungry, corrupt and a master of repression. The survivor of an airstrike in Iraq tries to learn why his home was targeted. Listen on a computer, an iOS device or an Android device. Like the morning briefing, then consider subscribing to our evening briefing. It's a rundown of the day's biggest news and the stories you won't want to miss. Free, right to your inbox. Sign up here. Comcast is in talks to buy some of 21st Century Fox's entertainment assets. The deal would include a vast TV distribution business overseas, the Fox Studio, and the FX cable network, but not Fox News or the Fox Broadcast Network. Tesla unveiled a battery-powered, nearly self-driving semi-truck, which it hopes to start selling by the end of 2019. Tesla's chief executive, Elon Musk, said his company's self-driving truck would have a single charge range of 500 miles, greater than many analysts had expected. CreditAl, via Reuters, about 210,000 gallons of oil leaked out of the Keystone Pipeline in South Dakota, days before Nebraska regulators were to decide whether to approve a pipeline proposal by the same company. A British bakery chain apologized for creating a nativity scene in which the baby Jesus, surrounded by 3 wise men, was replaced by a sausage roll. U.S. stocks were up on Thursday. Here's a snapshot of global markets. Tips, both new and old, for a more fulfilling life. New guidelines sharply reduce the threshold for hypertension. Here's how to lower your blood pressure. You're aging well. Your makeup should too. Recipe of the day: Marcella Hazan's Gold Standard Bolognese, a creative collaborator. In today's 360 video, meet the man who helped bring Bjork's creative vision to life on her latest album, Partisan Writing You Shouldn't Miss. Writers from across the political spectrum discuss the accusations against Senator Al Franken. Ready for the weekend? Our critics loved Mudbound, about the daily cruelties of post-World War II Mississippi, and Wonder, about a boy who is inspirational in his differences. They also aired Justice League. We recommend 11 new books and note what's new on services. If you're looking for something else too, the Leonard's Meteor Shower reaches its peak this weekend. Finally, check out what's new in New York City theater, art and dance. We also guide you to the city's best pop, rock, and jazz, and classical performances. Best of late-night TV. Stephen Colbert was unimpressed by Al Franken's initial response to a UAL harassment accusation. Quotation of the day: "It's as if the system is having a nervous breakdown, putting at risk all our city's great advantages: our economy, our environment and our mobility." Gene Rushinoff, a New York City transit advocate for 4 decades, on deteriorating subway service. Pope Francis has declared Sunday the World Day of the Poor. The Pope took his name from St. Francis of Assisi, who took a vow of poverty in the 13th century. Francis has focused his papacy on lives that he says have been sacrificed on the altar of money and profit. Pope Francis in St. Peter's Square on Wednesday. There is a scandalous growth of poverty in broad sectors of society throughout our world, he has said. CreditAl Alessandra Tarantino, Associated Press. The Pope has urged the world's 1.2 billion Catholics to honor the day. The Vatican will observe it with a mass for 4,000 people in need, who will then be invited to lunch. This week, free medical services have been provided in front of St. Peter's Square, and charitable volunteers will be honored in prayer. In a message released in June, Francis exhorted Catholics to go beyond the occasional volunteer work or impromptu acts of generosity that appease our conscience, even as ostentatious wealth accumulates in the hands of the privileged few. He noted, "There is a scandalous growth of poverty in broad sectors of society throughout our world. Faced with this scenario, we cannot remain passive, much less resigned." The Mass will be aired live on Sunday at 4 a.m. Eastern and again at 1:30 p.m. You can hear Laurie Moore contributed reporting, _______. Your morning briefing is published weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern and updated all morning. Browse past briefings here. If photographs appear out of order, please download the updated New York Times app from iTunes or Google Play. What would you like to see here? Contact us at briefing@nighttimes.com. You can get the briefing delivered to your inbox Sunday through Friday. We have 4 global editions, timed for the Americas, Europe, Asia and Australia, and an evening briefing on weeknights. Check out our range of free newsletters here.